Welcome. This is Dr. Owen Anderson, and we're continuing in David Hume's dialogues. We're to our second video on part 10, where we get a clear statement of the problem of evil. Before this, Cleanthes Demea and Philo had been agreeing that the world is filled with misery and wickedness, and that this is the source of religion. People become religious because of misery. Now we're going to give a statement of the problem of evil. If we grant that God's power is infinite, that whatever he wills to happen does indeed happen, but neither man nor any animal is happy, therefore God doesn't seem to will their happiness. Or if we say his knowledge is infinite, he's never mistaken in his choice of means to any end, but of course nature doesn't lead to human or animal happiness. Therefore, nature isn't established for that purpose. It was established for some other purpose. And I think that since the time of Hume, Darwin and Darwinists have said, yeah, the purpose of nature is just survival, not your happiness. His justice, benevolence, mercy, and uprightness lead to this question, well, why is there evil? And so Epicurus's old questions have still not been answered. Is God willing to prevent evil but not able? Then he's impotent. Is he able but not willing? Then he's malevolent. Is he both able and willing? Then where does evil come from? So you ascribe purpose and intention to nature, Cleanthes. This is Philo talking. And I think you're right about that, but what, I ask you, is the aim of all the intricately designed machinery that nature has displayed in all animals? What is this design then? It doesn't seem to be happiness. The aim is simply the preservation of individuals and the continuation of the species. There it is. Roughly 80 years before Darwin's Origin of Species. Not a new idea in Darwin. It seems enough for nature's purpose if the species is merely enabled to stay in existence without any care or concern for the happiness of its individual members. That's not its purpose. No means were provided, no machinery aimed purely at the giving pleasure or ease, no store of pure joy and contentment, no gratification without some lack or need to go with it. Our sense of music, harmony, and indeed beauty of all kinds gives satisfaction without being absolutely necessary to the preservation and propagation of the species. Couldn't God have made a system where your sense of beauty was tied to your ability to survive? It almost seems the opposite here. You'd have to go through some difficult things, grotesque things to further your survival. But contrast that with the racking pains that arise from gouts, gravels, migraines, toothaches, rheumatisms, where the injury to the animal machinery is either small, so that no pain signal is needed, or incurable, so that no pain signal is useful. So imagine that you have something wrong with you that hurts intensely, like a toothache, but nothing can be done about it. Not every toothache is cured by just pulling the tooth. Some you just suffer through. And so the pain is not useful, and since it's incurable, it's not helpful. So why make us to have pain like that? It's not a good design. So how then does God's benevolence display itself according to you anthropomorphites? It is only we mystics who can account for the strange mixture of phenomenon by deriving it from divine attributes that are infinitely perfect but incomprehensible. His answer to the solution to the problem of evil is we just don't know. It's incomprehensible. So we're going to go over, we'll see about 5 solutions here, and that's the first one. At last, Philo, said Cleanthes, you, with a smile, you have let us see what you've been up to. Your long agreement with Demea surprised me a little, but now I see that all along you were preparing to train your guns on me. And I must admit that you have now come to a subject that is worthy of your notable spirit of opposition and controversy. If you make good on your present point and prove mankind to be unhappy or corrupted, there is an immediate end to all religion. So the objection to Philo's first answer, God is incomprehensible, is if that were true, all religion ends. You couldn't praise God for anything because you don't know what it means for God to be good. You couldn't pray for anything because you might be praying for something that's evil. You don't know. It's incomprehensible. So now Demea will respond. You're very quick to object, replied Demea, to innocent opinions that are the most widely accepted even among religious and devout people. So again, Demea feels himself on the side of the mystic. I'm immensely surprised to find this theme of the wickedness and misery of man being charged with, of all things, atheism and profaneness. Haven't all pious divines and preachers who have lavished their rhetoric on this rich topic given a solution for any difficulties that may come with it? So he thinks there's an easy solution. You start with the misery and wickedness of man in the preacher. And what's the solution? This world is a mere point in comparison with the universe. This life a mere moment in comparison with eternity. The present evil phenomenon, therefore, are set right in other religions at some future time. Heaven. Sure, this life's rough, but it's a short life. And you die a miserable death. And then you go to heaven. And when that happens, the eyes of men being then open to broader views of things will see the whole connection of general laws and with admiring wonder trace God's benevolence and justice through all the mazes and intricacies of his providence. You can't know now, but in the future, you will know. Heaven. Now, first thing that we notice is that has the same exact problem as Philo's. If you can't know now, but to get into heaven, you have to be good, then you can't know what you're supposed to do now to get into heaven. So religion ends. But Cleanthes adds another one. These arbitrary suppositions can never be admitted. They're contrary to visible and unchallenged facts. How can any cause be known except from its own effects? How can any hypothesis be proved except from the experimental phenomenon? To base one hypothesis on another is to build entirely in the air, and the most we ever achieve through these conjectures and fictions is to show that our opinion is possible. We can never show that this is true. The only way to support divine benevolence, and is what I'm willing to accept, is to deny the misery and wickedness of man. So he's going to give his solution here. But his answer is this: you can't know the cause of something without knowing the effect. You know the cause from the effect. This sentence, I'm getting that backwards. How can any cause be known except from its known effects? So if you go to heaven thinking you'll know the cause, you're mistaken about that too. Nothing in heaven is going to tell you what the cause is. Let's say, why did this bad thing happen? Because of this other thing. To make this other thing happen. Well, why did that happen? Because of this third thing. And that will just keep going on and on. So we don't actually ever arrive at knowing anything. If you have to know everything to know anything, you'll never know anything. What you could know in heaven, you could know now about why there's evil. So he says this: humans aren't really miserable and wicked. Your picture of the human condition is exaggerated. Your melancholy views are mostly fictitious. Your conclusions are contrary to fact and experience. Health is more common than sickness, pleasure than pain, happiness with misery. So his solution is there's more good than evil in the world. You guys are just being glass half empty types. I'm a glass half full type. Well, here's the problem with that is, what if the glass is empty? Then there's no debate. And that's what Philo and Demea are saying, is it's full. of misery and wickedness. That reverses it. Because I was doing half full is good, half empty is bad. It's full of misery and wickedness. There's no debate. Is it half full of goodness? No, it's full of misery and wickedness. Your position is extremely doubtful, replied Philo. But even if we allow it, you must at the same time admit that if pain is less frequent than pleasure, it is infinitely more violent and lasting. 1 hour of pain is often able to outweigh a week, a day, a month of our ordinary tepid enjoyments. And some people pass days, weeks, and months in the most acute torment. So, a couple problems you can come up with Cleanthes' view. One is this: pain feels much worse than your normal daily enjoyments. A toothache is much worse than the enjoyment that comes from a frappuccino. And many people go through life with aches like that constantly on them. No one passes out from enjoyment of a frappuccino, but people somewhat often are hit with such pain that they pass out. It's so intense. So the relationship between the two is not even similar, he's saying. People hardly ever rise to the heights of ecstasy and rapture, and it can never continue for any time at its highest pitch and altitude. The spirits evaporate, the nerves relax, the body is out of order, and the enjoyment quickly degenerates into fatigue and uneasiness. But pain often, how often, rises to torture and agony. And the longer it continues, the more thoroughly it becomes genuine agony and torture. Patience is exhausted, courage fades, melancholy seizes us, and nothing puts an end to our misery except the removal of its cause or another event that is the sole cure of all evil, though our natural foolishness leads us to regard it with still greater horror and consternation. So again, reemphasizing this point about the world's filled with suffering. And anyone who's lived a little bit has suffered those kinds of pains and can hardly say that the enjoyments in life outweigh their intensity. So he says, Cleanthes' position is on dangerous grounds, and without realizing it, you have introduced a total skepticism into the most essential articles of natural and revealed theology. What? No way to give religion a basis unless we allow the happiness of human life and maintain that a continued existence even in this world, with all our actual pains, infirmities, vexations, and follies, is satisfactory and desirable? But that's contrary to everyone's experience, which means that it's contrary to all religion. If you take that as the basis for religion, then there is no basis for religion, because people aren't continually happy. They're continually miserable. And we can look at some ways in which they're miserable. Animal happiness, or at least human happiness in this life, exceeds its misery. This doesn't mean simply the non-human mammals. It's talking about your physicality and the happiness that comes from it. To say that happiness exceeds misery, no one will ever believe that. Or at any rate, you'll never be able to prove it. Even if you think it Cleanthes, you can't prove that. Even if we grant it to you, your argument has still achieved nothing, for this is far from what we expect of the infinite power, wisdom, and goodness of God. And that's the key here. On this third objection, the first was God's incomprehensible. The second is you'll know in the afterlife. The third is there's more good than evil. What I highlighted there is the silver bullet that kills this. If God is infinite, there shouldn't even be one instance of evil. So even if it was 99.9999% good, God's infinite. Why is there anything not good? Is it due to the intention of God? Then God's not benevolent. Is it contrary to his intention? But he's almighty. Nothing can shake the solidity of his reasoning. So short, so clear, so decisive. Unless we say that these subjects exceed all human capacity and that our common measures of truth and falsehood are not applicable to them. A thesis I have all along insisted on. So that's what he said. What we what we need to do, his solution here is God is amoral. That's the next solution, fourth solution. Amoral, not immoral. Zeus is immoral. God is amoral, beyond good and evil. The categories of good and evil are human inventions. That's Philo's next solution. But I'll be contented to shift back from this position, doing this voluntarily. Let's allow, for the purposes of argument, that pain or misery in man is compatible with infinite power and goodness of God, even when these attributes are understood in your way. What help do these concessions give your position? A mere possible compatibility is not sufficient. You must prove the existence of these pure, unmixed, and uncontrollable attributes from the present mixed and confused phenomenon. Even if the phenomenon were ever so pure and unmixed, because they're finite, they would be insufficient for your purpose. So here, Cleanthes, I can relax on my argument. Here I triumph. When we argued earlier about the natural attributes of intelligence and design, I needed all my skeptical and metaphysical subtlety to escape your grasp. In many views of the universe and of its parts, particularly its parts, the beauty and fitness of final causes strike us with such irresistible force that all objections seem to be mere fault finding, and that we can't imagine how we could ever outweigh them or give weight to them. But there is no view of human life or the condition of mankind from which we can smoothly infer the moral attributes of God. So how the tables are turned. The design argument in one earlier, Cleanthes thought, presses us to God. Philo's using this to say, then we should look at the design of humans and infer God is amoral.